Hello everyone, Don here again with the next update on my 83 Mustang Restoration project, or rebuild if you want to call it that. So what I got done this week is I went ahead and started cleaning off the rust off of my replacement parts here. As you can see inside the cowling area I still have some rust. That was the heaviest stuff in there, but it's over probably 50-70% clean. Just a few places left to re-hit. I was out yesterday working on this thing for probably 4 hours. I'd spray it down, wait, come back, scrub it a little bit with this little stainless steel brush. That's all I used. And rinse it off with water, let it dry, soak it back down again. Alright, so what I did is I started with this stuff here. This is just a, you can buy this at Lowe's, Home Depot and such. It's phosphoric acid. So I used that first. That kind of takes off of the, like this lighter rust here from basically water. It will strip that stuff off pretty good. And I started off with just a little Scotch-Brite pad to scuff it with Scotch-Brite, and that helps kind of rub that stuff off pretty quick. But that stuff is a little slow. It's not as concentrated. You can literally get it on your hands. If you got any cuts or scratches on there, it'll sting, but it won't burn your fingers off. Now this stuff on the other hand, which is Muriatic Acid, that stuff is highly concentrated. You can buy it at hardware stores also. You can get it at Lowe's, Home Depot and such. And it's a very more concentrated acid. You don't get that on your skins directly. If you do, you'll notice it real quick. It'll start stinging. But when you open this container up, you need to be in a well-ventilated area or outside, because that stuff just fumes. I mean, there's just white fumes coming out of that container as soon as you open it. And you get it in your nose, and you're going to know it's acid, because it just stings like crazy. It is pure. It's not, I mean, it's still a very reduced ratio of acid, but it's way more severe than this stuff, and it works 10 times faster. So what I usually do is dilute it down. I've had 4 or 5 gallons of this stuff, but I've had to keep using bigger and bigger totes, like that kitty litter box there. That part I'd like to strip down, but I need a bigger container, which I probably have, and that's why I had so much. But most of my acid I have now, this is the Murianic Acid here, it kind of turns yellow after. It's a clear solution when it starts, but it turns yellow as it starts dissolving rust. It will eat the rust away really fast in a straight concentration. I mean, you're talking a matter of minutes to get something that's pretty heavily rusted. Anything with just a light surface rust on it, or if it's zinc plated, it'll be gone in seconds. It just starts fizzing up like soda pop, you know. I've got this piece soaking here, and as soon as I put it in, there's a spring clear down here on the end between these two pieces. That just fizzed right up, in about 15 seconds it was done. That means it completely stripped all the zinc plating off of that spring. And that linkage itself is pretty much the same thing, but it's kind of dirty, so it's probably going a little slow. And this is a very diluted solution. It's probably well over 50%, maybe only 25% solution. But it's fairly light. So I started using that in here in the heavier stuff and the heavier corrosion. Remember how rusted these things were. Okay, and then if we look at the sides, you can remember that these side pieces, they were literally just rust from top to bottom. They were completely coated in surface rust. If you can see them now, there's absolutely no rust left on them whatsoever. Those cleaned up fairly quick. And they both, same thing, both sides. There's still some rust to get in here. You know, I sprayed it down and worked it, but I didn't work it as much as I did this. And as you can see, I threw on some of that etching primer paint on here to cover all the bare metal stuff up. So it's pretty much ready. And this thing here, I ended up setting that just in a tub. I stood this up on end, stuck this in a tub, filled it with that acid, and let it set overnight. When it came out, this was completely clean in here. There's not a spot of rust back in here whatsoever. So that's all hit with that self-etching primer also. So for the most part, it's cleaned up quite a bit. This stuff down here is pretty much just kind of grease and grime. But I did go over the whole thing, and there was a lot of little spots like this. It was just all, you know, surface rusted. And then hitting with that brush and that acid, it pretty much cleaned it up good. This still has a little more cleaning to do. I'm going to take a better look at them after I get them completely stripped down. A little bit of seam seal stuck still on that. some seam seal in that corner. Anything that's seam sealed, I'm going to be ripping all that stuff out and redoing it. But as you can see, the strut tower has had a pretty good rusty spot on it, but it all cleaned up really good. So that's what I've been doing for the past couple days. That panel, I don't know if I had it out the last time, but I did remove that panel. That's the one panel from the original. Right side is going to be reused. And if I can do this with one hand, it literally goes on right here. Pretty much like so. So this panel needs to be finished clean. This is where the battery tray was mounted, so this one's in pretty good shape. But the other little panel that goes to it was rusted out. And also that's the side that had the rusted out frame rail. So I'm pretty sure I went ahead and threw some primer, again, etch primer on all the bare metal parts here. Cleaned everything down, wiped it all down with thinner and such. This I didn't paint because this is where I'm going to physically be welding. If anything, it needs paint under here, so I'll have to shoot that. But I did some light cleaning on this stuff. So what I ended up doing is went to the metal place in town and bought a piece of 16 gauge steel. Took it to work and spent about an hour or so getting this thing bent into shape. And then I tore apart the other one. This is a doubler that came out of the donor car. As you can see real close up, it's heavily pitted from the rust, but it's the bulk of it's still there. It's just an extra doubler that goes in place for the sway bar attached to, which goes somewhere in this area. Sorry. Watching my hands and not the camera. So that'll all be spot welded in place. All these holes are where I had to drill out the spot welds to get it apart. And then up in the front section is the piece all ready to be welded in for the bumper reinforcement. The bumper slides in from this end, slides in from here, bolts into there. So this will get spot welded through here on the sides. But first I'm going to do the 4 holes on the bottom. And then I'll 2 on each side, pull them together and do that. And then this one here, I'll have to drill some holes in here. So after I find out exactly where this piece goes, it's basically going to look like this one right here, but it's a mirror image, right side. So that goes in there. So I made this, and again, sprayed the inside with that self-etching primer. And then after that gets welded in, it's going to tend to burn some of the primer, so I'll just recoat it before this goes in. And once those 2 pieces are welded in, I can actually have to spray some paint on here, weld this on, and then that'll be ready to install into the parts back there. So that's kind of where I got this week. I spent a couple days working on this. As you can see, these holes here are going to be my spot welds to weld it. This welds right to the apron, which is this big heavy piece here. So those holes are going to be welded across here. And then these holes are the outside that get welded across this panel. This panel is still on the other fender, so it's still good. Just finished cleaning it. All this still needs to be cleaned out. Still need to patch that up. But I'll come through and treat all this stuff with the acid. And remember, this is kind of what that rust looked like on those parts over there that are these long tapered sections. So that's kind of where I'm at. As soon as I weld these things up, that piece will be ready to weld onto that panel after I'm happy that front nose clip, I'm happy with that. Here's some other parts that I threw in the acid and cleaned up. That was just brake lines, fuel lines come around a corner, and that tucks them up in there. These are attached to the outsides of these things, and that's where the, let's see, it'll be, yeah, this one will be out here somewhere. That's where the brake line attaches to the soft line to the actual caliper. So I acid dipped all those and threw some primer on them, so they're ready to go. Those will get, these just get bolted on. There'll be 2 holes, they just get bolted in place. See if there's anything else I did this week. I don't think so. Just dug through some parts. Most of this week was messing with that frame rail, getting that bent up, prepped, ready for welding. And the last couple days I spent cleaning off this. So it's definitely a lot cleaner than it was. and the bulk of the rust is now gone. And after, what you do is, to keep this from rusting, after I wash this down, acid it, wash it, rinse it off, and let it dry, that stuff flash rusts over really quick. Once it dries off, it has that real faint rust on there. So you spray a little bit of the acid back on there and it just comes right off again. And then the last time I cleaned up for the day, I went through this 3 or 4 times. Acid, scrub, rinse, acid, scrub, rinse. And then at the last time of the day, after you get done rinsing off the muriatic acid, most of the work is to get that heavy rust in out of there. And once the last prep was done, well, once you rinse it off with water, before it even dries, you take this stuff at a diluted solution of, maybe 5 or 10%. I put that in a spray bottle, and then I spray down those bare metal parts. Anything that was bare steel, I might have put some in there, I don't remember. But I was concentrated on these parts here. And then when it dries, as you can see, it doesn't rust, it doesn't flash over. Now imagine if you were to hit that again with acid again, you'll probably rinse that protection layer off. What they say is once you use that phosphoric acid on there, after you can use it. Alright folks, sorry about that. The battery died on me. Seems like I can only get a couple videos out of this thing before it dies, even after full charge. But what I was into saying was that after you clean this metal with either the phosphoric acid, the green stuff, or the muriatic acid, once it's done and clean, once it dries, it will flash over rust again. So to prevent that, you take, after the last rinse down to get the acid off, then you take and mix up a diluted mixture of that phosphoric acid with about a 5 to 10% mix, and then when you spray it on there, after it's still wet from the rinse off, and then it will dry, and it leaves a basically an invisible coating on there that if you get water splashed on it anytime after that, it won't flash back over with rust. It'll basically just give it like a white stain mark. So I found this tip from a guy on the internet on how to clean the metal and keep it from rusting over again. So, but if you kind of wash that off afterwards, I think that's possibly, that might just be some paint residue overspray from the white. Most of it kind of had a grayish green color primer on it, and most of that came off. But you can see there's no pitting from the rust whatsoever. Up here there's some light pitting. There's still a little bit of rust under there, but that's livable. So, alright, I think that's going to about do it. What I'm going to try and do here is go get me a fresh gallon of muriatic and hit that stuff with almost some full strength, and get the rest of that cleaned out. And then I'll get it prepped up and start cleaning the rest. But as soon as I get this done, I need to find something to put in there. I know a lot of people know about the Pour 15, which is paint over rust material. I remember years back there was a solution that was kind of a milky white. It was thin. It wasn't paint. It was a corrosion converter or encapsulator. You brushed it on. It goes on fairly thin, but once you brush it on there, that white will eventually turn to rust black, and it encapsulates it just like modern day stuff. I can't remember what it was called, but it's not a paint. It's not Pour 15 or anything like that. It was a real light white, off-white kind of a watered down milky color. So I'm going to see if I can find something like that, because that's basically what I need to do, is just kind of seal it first, and then I'll probably use some kind of paint on, like Pour or something, to get in there and manually paint that with a paintbrush, because you're not going to see any of that after it's all together. There's a cowl assembly that bolts on here with the louvers, and then your windshield wipers come out one there, and the other comes out here. So that whole thing gets covered from clear over here, clear back over to here with a cowling. It's a plastic cowl. So, all right. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and cut this video at this point. And as always, I appreciate everyone taking their time to watch my videos. As always, feel free to leave any comments, questions, or concerns, and I'll answer them as they come along. So this week has been pretty cold. Today it was just barely above freezing all day, 32, 33 degrees. So But with the torpedo heater in here, 5 minutes, it's up to temperature, and I got to peel off my coat and hat and get to work. So, all right, I'll just keep plugging away at this as we go. All right, again, thanks everybody for watching. This is Dino Don out.